All right.
All righty, boys and girls, welcome to RE-Talesio. Today we got a great episode. So you got usual guys here. You got myself, Ryan, Rebekah, Jessica. But today we actually have. I mean, Anne, it's your fault that we're doing this. I mean, you're the one that told me, Shlomo, I think you're good at this. I mean, as a matter of fact, Chris and Ann, I think it's your fault that the whole world is into podcasting and the retail side of things. I think you guys are the OGs.
I agree with that.
No, I'll be an OG.
Sure.
Yeah, sure. I'll take credit for that.
The old part.
I got no problem with that at all.
Yeah.
Right. The youngest looking
The
OGs
original.
ever.
Yeah. Right.
Yes.
Right.
If old,
Well,
older
it's-
place
It does seem like a
of
lot of people have jumped into the podcasting fray since we started, for sure.
Yeah, I mean it's fun.
Yeah.
You get to have a lot of personality that comes out that you don't get in the stand up on the stage.
Speak for
at Shop
yourself,
Talk or
man.
something.
Speak for yourself.
I will. That's fine.
The thing that I love the most about watching your guys' podcast, Omnitalk Retail, excuse me, is that it's hard hitting, it's funny, and it's no holds barred. I mean, you could have Facebook or Meta, advertising, and you'll go right at them. I mean, it's like, hey, listen, it's the Howard Stern show of retail. Here we go.
That's I like that. I like that
know.
analogy too. God, you're too kind, Shlomo. You're too
Yes.
kind.
No,
He's
thank
coming
you.
out with all the compliments this morning. I think
I
that
know.
you should be really scared for what the next 15.
I know, right? I'm
Pattern never.
Right?
very
Right.
daunted.
Yeah,
in
and
front of me.
before we start, it's important to let you guys know that Jessica Mouse is the OG of getting dressed up on podcasts. She's the
Yeah.
first one that ever did that.
Oh, I've
And
seen the
Rebekah,
videos.
She
Rebekah-
inspired me.
Yeah, I was
Yeah,
gonna say, Jessica, I was expecting. I didn't know if I wanted the gold chain and the beanie today. That was really my hope. So I'll settle for which, but I have great expectations for what's to come in the episodes ahead.
Yeah, and Rebekah's exterminated in the show today, so it was a problem.
No, is there something wrong?
Oh,
Oh my
I would've
lord!
moved my head
All
over.
righty. So
Wow.
with that, without further ado, we're going to dig in. Today's title is Retail Innovation Rapid Fire, Yay or Nay, and essentially, I mean, our goal is to basically pick apart some of the supposed retail innovations and sort of talk about whether there's a life to it, whether it's just PR, whether it's what the point of the whole thing is, and we're going to do a bit of a round the table, and we'll dig into that. So I prepared a list, but something tells me that we're not going to necessarily stick to it. But we're going to start, I think, and Chris, I mean, I know you've been sort of waiting for this one.
Oh,
Retail innovation. Okay, now, I don't know if aeronautics is retail innovation, but tell us about the following thing. Is it a success? Is it a failure? Is it a future success, future failure? Or is it just a matter of feeding PR and giving Business Wire, owned by our good friend, Mr. Warren Buffett, some business? Drones, delivery drones for retail. Where are we on that, Chris and Ann?
drones. Wow. Ann, do you want me to take that, or you want to go?
I think Shlomo set you up for this.
He
one,
wants
so
me
you
to
guys
take
probably
that?
go
And you're
first.
going next. You get ready.
All right, I'll go first. Yeah, I mean, I think drones is mostly PR at this point, 100% PR. If you look at all the things that have to happen for drone delivery to take hold, it's like about 1,000. It's about 1,000 miles of if-then statements for it to get pulled off. And honestly, I think at the end of the day, it's probably not that much better of an economic solution in the long run than, say, electric delivery vehicles, number one, and then number two, autonomous delivery vehicles, mainly because they take goods from a point of one to many, whereas a drone is really a point-to-point delivery solution, which doesn't seem very economically viable. And then you throw in all the other, hamstrings that come with it, i.e., like you need a pilot to watch the drone as it's making its delivery, or the fact that you have to figure out all the traffic routes for these things to fly through the air. It just seems borderline ridiculous to me, honestly.
And we haven't even talked about like the pilots they're doing in California, where people were like planning on shooting them out of the sky. Like that's not even factor that we're considering right now. But
No, that's actually
That's my
happening, though.
idea. I'm going to catch me
It's
some dinner
actually
tonight.
happening.
yeah,
So they went out to a farm town in Central California to test this, right? Did you read this article too? Okay.
yeah.
Farm town. Which, P.S., like if anybody who doesn't know the geography of California, there's this whole strip through the center of the state called Central California.
Yeah.
And it is no man's land. It is
Basically
all
nothing.
ag, and it's a bunch of conservatives and gun-toting, water-loving people. And they want nothing to do with drones flying over their property unless it's spraying like herbicides or something. Like they can care less. They don't want your package over their fields. Like they've got whatever to grow. Like they don't care. So there's literally farmers out there like ready to shoot down drones. So I mean, if that was the big test, I think that they picked the wrong geography, like just totally wrong place. And two, it's gonna happen all over the place. Yeah.
I am surprised though. I have to say, like, we have talked to some retailers in probably the last like 6 months though, who are into it.
Yeah, they're buying what's getting.
Yeah.
They're the cat licking up the stoop, basically the
Yes.
spilled milk
Well,
on the stoop, 100%.
You have to have those because who else drinks the Kool-Aid? You can't just have one guy on the Kool-Aid. Like somebody's. That's the reason we have the whole Kool-Aid container. Because if you made one cup, it wouldn't be as fun. So you gotta make a bigger batch.
Yeah. So I think we'll see. I do think we're going to see. Well, I don't think that it's something that I would be investing in personally as a retail executive at this point in time. I think we're going to see more experimentation with it that probably gets killed or gets reinvested into some kind of autonomous delivery, like Chris was talking about.
Walmart to keep talking about it 100%. What did they say? They have 3 million. They can deliver to 3 million households here with drones by the end of the year, which means that's where they're operating. But they probably have like 10 people actually doing it or even trialing it. So yeah, I think you're right. You'll keep seeing it, but it's nothing more than PR fanfare at this point. I mean, keep in mind, like we first heard about drones back in 2013. That's when the Jeff Bezos 60 Minutes interview aired. We're 10 years from that now. Like this is how far we've gotten, is talking about first line tests in the central part of California. I mean, you got to be kidding me right now. So like we're years away from seeing this.
Well, Ryan, what's the advertising value of saying that you're putting a drone program in place?
Well, I was just going to say this. If you want to start a consulting business today, become a drone delivery consultant and just mop up business for like a good decade. Do you know what I mean? Kind of like revision it, rethink it, rework it. But my goodness, like what a bunch of nonsense in the short term. Although if I was an optimist, I would say this. If you just literally minimize the expectation of drone delivery down to like a sort of partial edge case and somehow pulled it off, I don't even know what that is, and it worked, everyone would be clapping and you look like a genius, and the market size is probably like $100 million, and that's kind of the end of it.
It sounds like very little payoff.
Shlomo, you're talking about the drones that fly in the sky, but what about the little robots that drive down the street and deliver stuff? Like, is there a difference, Chris and Ann, or are we lumping all of these autonomous delivery things together?
Yeah,
that's a really good question. Go ahead.
Yeah, there's a definite difference. I think, we're even seeing some cool, like Tortoise, for example. Like we're seeing this idea of it like operating, like the Mall of America is testing it. I just tried it the other day, where it's like it's roving around autonomously through the theme park in the middle of the Mall of America, and you can stop it and open it up and take out an icy or something for your kids. Like that's cool. Like there's an application for that. It makes sense. It's in a controlled environment inside. But then, on the other hand, we're seeing the same kind of robots that are roaming around the city of Chicago. We just covered it on our podcast a couple of weeks ago, where, they're not as successful. Like this is not the kind of, again, like Chris was saying earlier, it's about one-to-one delivery. They're small little like delivery robots that can take one order to one house and then go back. And it doesn't make sense. I mean, I think what we are saying is going to be a more progressive, more successful option is something like a RoboMart, where you have you can hail the store to your house. You can get things out of it from that. We are seeing a lot of other pilots that are delivering like multiple orders of groceries to one neighborhood with one electronic vehicle, not just the one-to-one.
Like a vending machine on wheels.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean that's the Tortoise use case, and Tortoise, has essentially pivoted their model to go after that, because the one-to-one delivery through small micro robots just wasn't working for them. Amazon shuttered their Scout program, which was essentially the same thing. So it shows you that there's this idea of one-to-one is just really tough, and it makes sense. It's hard to get scale in that. But there's a company that we're keeping an eye on too called Cleavon, which is looking at autonomous delivery for multiple packages through a neighborhood or through a different environment. So I think that day is coming. And Anne's point about RoboMart is very similar. Like it's about finding the right density and the right delivery vehicles to make it happen. But yeah, I think the smaller scale options just have the same issues.
Do we need a modern version of a Robert Moses to basically essentially have a delivery system below deck, if you will, so to speak, to put a highway system to deliver things autonomously? Because listen, I'm in Los Angeles, and in the corner there's this box with a blinking light just sitting there. I mean, where's it getting the goods from? The one-to-one issue, right? I mean, do we need infrastructure like that, and is that realistic?
I don't know. God, that's funny. We talked to a company about 3 or 4 years ago that was trying to pitch that idea of like the underground, like, you know, like you put the mail, you know, in the old school, like shooting it, like shoot up.
The tubes.
Yeah.
Yes. Had the tube, and it'd be like gone through the store.
Great.
Yeah.
I mean, Taco Bell's doing it now.
Yeah, right.
They've taken over the food
pneumatic
right, like when you go to the bank,
tacos?
right? You know, and you get your sucker at the end of your transaction.
In Minneapolis, in a suburb of Minneapolis, they just launched the Taco Bell
Defy.
Yeah,
Taco Bell Defy
defies how you get your tacos for the rest of your life.
It's like
the same system, and it shoots down the tube of your taco and it just opens up, and there's your order.
Oh my gosh!
Which also isn't new at all. But
is this the same system as Buddy the Elf with like it's like that thing?
Yeah.
Basically, it would be ideal if it was Buddy the Elf style. Yes, I think that's a direct rip.
Good reference, although I don't think you can use it yet because it's not actually Halloween yet. I mean, we haven't gotten through Halloween, Ryan. So you got to wait another day.
No Christmas references.
Yes. Yeah, but I don't know, Shlomo. I mean, yeah, maybe, but man, the infrastructure involved in that would be so intense to be able to pull that off. But you know,
so the beauty is the government doesn't have to throw off a profit, so they could be like Amazon and just like put the stuff in place and, you know, and charge toll. Imagine it's like we're sending you a taco. It may come all over the place. They may come together. We'll make just stick a quarter. You know, when they bury people back in the Norse days, they put coins on their eyes and put them into the fire. You know, like we'll have one of those. Put a coin in, send them over. See ya.
Exactly like that.
Taco delivery or Viking funeral. We're not quite.
Oh, and that's a 15-minute delivery. That'll give you 15-minute delivery profitably. Right?
Yeah, perhaps.
I mean, yeah, and then the real estate could be below grade. We don't have to waste time on real estate stores. Let's dig into 15-minute delivery. I mean,
okay.
Here's the thing. We know it's not profitable. Shock, okay? The only guy's shocked by that, the guy's out in your neck of the woods, Jessica. So, you know, great. Good for that. She's in San Francisco. But 15-minute delivery, do we need it? Let me buttress the question. My kids are buying on Shein like nobody's business for some reason. I shouldn't be telling that to anyone. But I think they wait 2 weeks to get their goods. And they're okay with it. Do we really need 15-minute delivery?
I can take that one. I don't. I mean, I think you could argue, do we really need any of the things that we have? Like, do we really need 2 day? Do we really need 1 day? But, you know, we existed as a society before all those things were here. But I think the real answer is, do we want it? And I think yes, we do. There are particular use cases, which Ann and I had the pleasure of trialing out when we were in New York City, where it's super relevant to you as a consumer. Like we ordered some popcorn. I ordered a COVID test at one point, and, you know, it was crazy. Like stuff got to me in 7 minutes. Now, can you make a business out of that? Can you get the economics out of that? I don't know. The judge and jury's still out on that one, but I think the demand is there on the consumer side as something that people would want, having done it. But I think we still haven't figured out, you know, all the elements that need to go into it to do it in the right way for the long run. But I think that's going to come.
But
yeah, I think it's the bigger. Oh, go ahead, Jessica.
But isn't that basically like an Instacart or an Uber? I mean, you can get things brought to you pretty quickly at this juncture. And when I think of something I need in 15 minutes, it's like a medicine or so.
Yeah.
You know, something like you don't need a shirt in 15 minutes or a whatever else, a widget in 15 minutes. So I'm curious of what the market share actually would be for the 15-minute category, right? Like, what is that market share of overall e-commerce?
Yeah, it's a great point. I mean, and that's the other thing too, is it 15 minutes? Is it 30 minutes? Is it under an hour? We haven't really figured out the landscape of how that's going to play out. But you talk to companies like, I mean, you look at companies like Kroger, they've said publicly on stage that they're losing share in the instant delivery market. And hence why they've gone after it to some degree with the right partners too. So there's something there.
Yeah, I think it's about the broader question of convenience and what that means for your customers too. And you might, take a hit, especially like the Kroger example that Chris is giving. Like you might take a hit on your 15-minute delivery, but if that incentivizes your customers to stick with you for the bulk of your purchases, for going into store, for doing grocery delivery in a day or whatever, if there's like incentive for them to still stick with you, and you might take that hit on that 15-minute delivery, it's still worth, having that customer and maintaining that customer and really being able to provide as many outlets as possible for that consumer to get the things that they need in the time frames that are appropriate to them. So it's not just an investment in 15-minute delivery. I think it's looking at it across the board and what options you can offer.
That's a great point. I mean, the other thing too is like we haven't seen how this is going to play out with all the membership models that are starting to emerge too across Walmart Plus, Kroger Boost, Amazon Prime, even like, could you get the add-on service or charge for this service too? I think that's still something to be determined as well.
Yeah.
Interesting. I question this whole thing about loss leaders in retail. I think because we have commerce has been democratized in very big way, at least access to commerce, opening up a computer, you got all over the place. How much do I need to invest to get a purchase? And the question is, can I really attach a lifetime value to a customer when they can leave me that quickly, right? It's basically, it seems like it's not an acquisition, but rather an advertising. And if you're not bringing in something that can compensate for the investment you make, then it goes writing advertising budgets, which brings us right back to the cost of customer acquisition, which advertising is sub of that doesn't have a direct correlation with lifetime value. So I question this whole 15-minute delivery, meaning as follows, and I think this goes also, and I'm curious to get your thoughts with regards to some of the quick delivery, the DoorDash and guys like that, right? So historically at a pizza shop, you're the guy behind the counter that basically owned the place, flipping his pizza, the cheese, the thing, I'll give you some, all right, great. But then he was a pizza delivery guy. That guy was honestly, I mean, I don't know if you guys have a pizza delivery guy.
Been in every movie known to mankind. That there isn't a pizza delivery guy in, just out of curiosity.
Yeah, exactly. So he was high half the time, right? And he finally came. He was like, "I got a pizza delivery guy for Jason." It says Jack. Okay, great. There you go. How do you take the pizza delivery guy public, and how do you find a profit on the pizza delivery guy if the pizza guy himself couldn't put his kids through college to begin with, right? And I know I'm moving the pieces, but I guess it all comes down to margins. It brings us back to the 15-minute delivery question. Like, yes, we all want it, but unless you're Bezos and you're running a loss on purpose to gain market share, just to set it up so that you have a high net worth for a very long time to put it off the CEO down the road. I know I'm going down a rabbit hole. I mean, what's the point? How do you make it happen?
Yeah, I mean, I think to your point, Shlomo, I mean, I think it gets back to what Ann was saying before. I mean, you have to mix out the whole thing for the good of the business. And I think that's what we haven't seen yet. I mean, we've seen the cool thing about the GoPuffs and the Getters and all those guys is they brought the idea to market. And now it's a question of how many consumers want it, what are they willing to pay for it, and can it be included in your range of services that you offer as a retailer, as Kroger, Walmart, and everybody else. Start to assess the value of it and offering it to your customers. I think that's the only right way to think about this at this point. But, to the point of loss leaders, I mean, loss leaders have existed in retail forever. I mean, I think of two big ones like that Costco, for example, the chicken, $4 chicken and the baked chicken and the $1.50 hot dog. I mean, they're not making money on that. It's basically the same idea. It's just the question that you have, which is the $64,000 question is how many people are going to want that and how many people will it keep sticky to the membership programs that Walmart, Amazon, and Kroger and everyone else continue to offer their customers.
I think we also need to wait and see too, Shlomo. And Ryan, you might have a perspective with your background on this too, but I think we haven't seen what kind of benefits we can get from. Sorry, my mic just went out. We haven't seen what kind of benefits we can get from the retail media networks and there's customer acquisition costs that are involved and there's a reason that people are choosing those loss leaders. But I think we still need to see what kind of revenue that brings out especially as we're seeing a lot of brands and retailers moving away from the giant TV commercials and instead to focus on advertising, on customer acquisition, where they can still, I mean, even if you leave, even if you did, DoorDash for a week and then you're gone, they still have that contact information about you. They still have the ability to connect with you to get you back as the customer. So I don't think it's as big of a loss as it once was. I think it's, like you're saying, the reallocation of those marketing and advertising dollars too, and how they're being spent, and what the whole I guess campaign or plan is for that company, and how they're going to get their customers to be loyal or to come back to them too.
Well, Rebecca, you're New York based, right? So what's your perspective on it? I mean, you benefit as much as anyone having it nearby.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess, yeah, I mostly agree with Anne. I think it's, it all comes down to like giving the customer what they want, right? So yeah, I actually have a question, Shlomo, for Anne and Chris.
Oh,
I really want to, do you mind if I change the topic a little bit?
hello.
Okay,
You're
great.
because I'm higher up over there on the side. I don't know if that's what you see, but I put myself down. You go up. Go.
Oh, hello.
Wow.
Oh my gosh. I just
There you go. You're in charge
flipped.
now.
Oh my goodness.
Heavy as the head.
Okay, so totally moving away from like drones and autonomous delivery and pizza delivery guys and all of that. I'm sorry. I would love to hear both of your perspectives on the use of holograms in physical retail. And like, I think we can use the word holograms loosely, like, kind of like whether it's a mirror that you look through and you can actually try on apparel, or something that even like measures you, like the true fit kind of things. And I'm seeing like these things go up and down, and I feel like they were really not really in style, but there were brands testing them like 2-3 years ago, and then they kind of fell off, and now they're kind of coming back. And so I would just love to hear, like, specifically in apparel. I know furniture, I've worked in furniture, it's a little bit different. There's like a lot of value add, in my opinion, there for furniture, but specifically apparel and like holograms and these like other fit tools.
I mean, I would say, like, if we're talking fit tools in general, Rebecca, like, I think personalization and the 3D scanning technology that's out there, that's like, we've seen a couple examples of that. One at the Savage by Fenty store
Yes.
in Vegas. And then also we just did a video of a Fleet Feet store in Chicago that's using a technology by Volumental that's like scanning and getting the actual volume of your foot, as opposed to just like watching somebody run on a treadmill and being like, I think these are the right shoes for you. Like it's I think enabling more confidence for the consumer in what they're purchasing, because it's like an actual rendering of their body. I think there's some other stuff out there that like Walmart has been experimenting with, that's, find a model like me, which is, I think, similar to some of the fit match stuff too that you're talking about too, Rebecca, where it's like this model is kind of like, or is more closely aligned with your body, but there's only 4 options or 8 options. It's not getting to the level that like this 3D fit technology is actually able to say, scanning your body, putting that digital twin against thousands of other, people's bodies that we've sampled. Here's, millions of products that we've sold, and matching that with millions of scans and saying, this is going to fit you with a, very high degree of confidence, versus this, we think this model looks a little bit like your body, or this mirror is trying to find a version of your body that will help with fit. I think there's a reason that those were sunset, that we're not seeing retailers use them as much. But the personalization technology, like Fit Tech, I'm all in it, 100%.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I mean, I think we talk about this on our show a lot, but if I was a retailer, I wouldn't be looking at AR for very few consumer use cases. If anything, I'd be looking at AR for operational use cases. That's where a retailer is going to have the biggest bang for the buck, in terms of, getting the utilization out of that technology. But yeah, no, I'm with Anne. I wouldn't be looking at that very hard. I mean, I think it go back to the question about like how many people want like instant delivery. I mean, I think a lot more people want instant delivery than they want like an AR visualization of their clothing.
100%. Yeah.
So like, I mean, that just kind of, and we were questioning how many people want instant delivery too. So like, it gives you an idea of orders of magnitude here.
Right. Can you say more about operational use cases? Because you like,
for sure,
perch up my spidey sense. I love operations.
I mean, there's a couple. I mean, AR in the warehouse is, already gaining traction in terms of helping people visualize very quickly what's in the right position, what needs to be picked, etc. The other application really is like what's happening in store as well. So
Mhm.
you can put computer vision into the mobile tablets or the mobile phones that the sales force are using, the employees are using in the store, to help get a clear picture of like what products are right on shelf, where the inventory counts are correct, where the pricing's accurate. Like those are the places I'd be experimenting with first and foremost. You can even give them that to the third-party pickers in your store too, to make their jobs easier as well, potentially, or the third-party players in your store that are charged with making sure your shelves look right all the time. So that's where I'd be getting the benefits out of AR, particularly in an in-store environment.
Yeah, receiving back of house, like just being able to use an AR scan to see like, okay, I'm reading millions of barcodes here on all these packages. Do I have what I think I have? Can I get that into my inventory system more quickly? That kind of thing.
Yeah, like capacity study to the 100th power or something.
Yes.
Yeah. No, that's great. Okay, perfect. Okay, no, I relinquish my takeover. I relinquish my takeover of the.
Yes, I think
right?
I think potentially another use for AR is if you were to merchandise the store before you actually merchandise it, right? You could literally take a test subject through a store. Well,
that's more VR. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
VR. I'm sorry, VR. Yeah, okay, VR. Yeah, got it. And sort of figure out what's going on. I think AR also, with regards to furniture, I think is a really solid, right? I think that's where you augment the furniture on the floor, right? I think that's something that works great as well. So all these concepts, AR, VR, drones that we spoke about, right? It almost, Liza Amlani, who's a friend of ours, asked the question, is like, why are solutions going to market without a better understanding of what customers actually want, right? And, there's a lot in that question. Obviously, customers want everything free. So you just, so I said, like, you ask them, they want it. Yeah, sure, give it to us, right? The question is they'll pay for it. But I think a bigger question is like, have we lost the ability, has the industry lost the ability to test things out at a low cost basis, right? It seems like someone tests stuff, they get $1 billion valuation, they pump money in like crazy, like, oops, didn't work.
There's a lot of smoke screens out there, and I think it applies to a lot of what you said, Shlomo. And that smoke screen is it's too easy and readily available to have a lot of jazz hand moments, right? Like, oh, I don't know. I'll pick on something. I'll pick on VR. We're all going to put on our goggles and have some jazz hands, and we're just going to walk around and shop with goggles on, and that's going to be the answer, right? And I think to some extent in the last 5 years, there's become a big smokescreen, right? We get really excited about something that don't really come back to practical use cases. Like, for example, when I was developing stores in the late 2000s and the iPad had just came out, 2009, 2010, like there was this big sort of idea about how we sort of design stores around the iPad with no practicality into thinking, well, what are they doing on it?
Why is it better than their phone?
Yeah,
right. Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Ryan, I mean, that's essentially what you just said is exactly why Ann and I started doing Omnitalk. It was to help clear through the clutter and all the noise out there in the retail headlines, and to present the perspective of real retailers who have done the work on what's happening, because one of the impetus for us doing this was we were running Target Store of the Future. And at the time, there was all these reports of all these, remember this, Ann? All the robots we were putting in the store. And I am here to tell everyone that there was not a single goddamn robot ever planned for that store. But yet it was riding the wave or this zeitgeist. And for 2 years, we heard about all these robots we were putting in the store. And we're sitting there laughing. We're like, there's not a single one. And so like, that's why we started doing what we did, because like,
except for the robot dancer I wanted to hire. There was like the intro, like kickoff.
Tiny dancer.
One of those like robots.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. That's why we do what we do, because there's so much noise out there and you've got to just speak plainly about it and give your best impression of where you think it's going to go. You might be right, you might be wrong, but it's important to have the conversation about it versus just accepting it blindly.
And like how quickly you're pivoting out of it. I mean, that's the other thing that I think we really admire about retailers, like the Wegmans example. Like they put out the scan and go shopping, it wasn't working, and they shut it down. Like I think that's the thing, that there's also so much ego wrapped into the people who are running these innovation teams, that it's like, well, we can't stop it, even though we're like, losing money or it's not successful. Like they keep pushing it and pushing it and pushing it. Whereas I think like the Wegmans example is excellent because you can like take a look back and they're not scrapping the idea by any means, but they need to take it back and figure out like how do we improve upon what we learned? How do we do that quickly? And how do we intelligently make the case to, you know, the C-suite that this is not something to trash. This is just something that needs continued innovation and work.
Why is it that every time we start talking about like autonomous drones and like these robots delivering things, I get like a flash of like a Scooby-Doo episode where all these like tiny little robots are like "Rah!" all over, you know, just like taking over the world. Like it's really scary, actually. It's like we saw this coming in the 70s. Like what happened? Like,
hold on, Jessica, you weren't alive in the 70s. Give me a break.
I wasn't, but I definitely watched 70s Scooby-Doo. They're still really good. My kids love Scooby-Doo. I watch more Scooby-Doo than I care to admit right now. And all I can think about is just like the creature from the islands like coming off, and it's all these like flying little robots. And unfortunately, that like it's not like a man in a costume behind it all though. Like these are we're actually sending things out there to like destroy everybody.
Well, it is after all a horror film. What's going on?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
staying on theme.
I'm sorry.
You're staying on theme for Halloween. It's the horror show. Yes.
Appropriate.
Yes.
Yeah, it is a horror show. And you know, what's interesting about it is that just talking about retail innovation generally, the thing that strikes me is that I think every retailer is trying to come up with their innovation that's going to outdo the competitor and therefore increase market share, right? And I think there's so much blood, i.e. money, that's been spilled at the altar of differentiation, where it almost would make more sense if they all chipped into some institute to come up with, you know, innovations, and then the execution is what differentiated them from the other. Because you look you take a look, maybe Silicon Valley is that institute, maybe investing in VC is that institute, but you look at so many of these companies that have been funded, you know, grown, and ultimately will not have a utility, and the amount of cash that's been put into it, net worth that's been built up as a result of it, and net worth that's about to evaporate or has been evaporating as a result, I think is a massive issue, to the point where I know I have had debates with people about Amazon, and the question, well, Amazon usually goes to, well, they're not profitable on the retail side, and we don't have to be profitable on what they're ultimately doing, although they do have obviously profits, but they're better for the industry. So I'm like, are they a for-profit, a slightly for-profit retail institute? Is that what they are?
So is that your question for us, Shlomo?
No. I'm just
philosophically
observing.
opining.
I'm philosophically opining exactly that it would seem as if they should all get together and do something. But let's go from there. It's like, okay, here's another innovation: pure play e-commerce.
Pure play e-commerce.
Is that an innovation anymore?
Well, it was innovation 20 plus years ago. It still hasn't finished innovating.
It kind of goes to the point of like, are we overthinking the consumer demand? Like, are we overthinking this whole retail thing? And do we go back to just straight e-commerce and also logistics through trains? Like, are we overthinking getting items to people at this juncture? Or can we just like streamline this whole thing and go back to trains and planes and
planes, automobiles?
Pure play, like the building blocks.
Yeah, my question is pure play versus install, right? Okay, so here's the deal. E-commerce is something that certainly is here, right? The fact you could actually buy things online, it's just the next step of the catalog, right? We all know that, we all understand that, right? Now we know that it has its profitability issues, there's no question. So the question is, Chris and Ann, pure play e-commerce in the box, we're just going to be warehouses, website, returns back and forth, do whatever innovation you want in between, but that's all it is. No stores, no other approach to it. And there are some people that actually do it, and quite frankly, take a look at Shopify. I mean, that's their bread and butter. Take a look at Amazon in a very big way. That's their bread and butter. So the question is that innovation? Yes, no, future? Where do you see it evolving, etc.?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think it's just all, you know, everyone's got to find a happy medium, and it all comes down to who are you as a brand, you know, and are you a retailer or are you a brand? That's always the question we ask on our show. Like, and then how do you position yourself across the landscape, whether you want to go direct to consumer yourself, or do you want to go wholesale through the retailers or open up your own physical stores, a la Warby Parker or Allbirds, the latest examples of that. The more interesting question to me is actually not what happens e-commerce versus physical retail? Because I think, right, like everyone's going to go through, get their sea legs under them. And then at some point they're going to approach retail and they're going to figure out if it's right for them, or they're going to approach wholesale or whatever. The interesting question to me more so lately, especially coming out of grocery shop, is who is the end retailer in the mind of the consumer, right? And that's where I think the idea of social commerce will continue to evolve, and how we get inspired online is still changing fundamentally. And so there's going to become this play between the three parties, the social media networks, the retailers, and the CPGs, to grab hold of that mind share. And what's going to be interesting about that is, as they capture that, take the example of the CPG, scrolling through your feed, they serve up, Cheerios. I'll use as an example. I want Cheerios today, right? They're going to be able to sell that to us really quickly and really efficiently through their connection with us. And the retailer is going to be more of an afterthought, just there for fulfillment. You can get it wherever you want as quickly as you want. That's really what's going to be interesting to me, is watching the reclaiming of their position of power from the CPGs, because they can take advantage of that psychology in terms of how people are shopping. That's what I'm paying most attention to in this question. It's kind of an offshoot, but it gets at the same idea, because the CPGs now have the tools to go direct in a different way than they ever have before.
Yeah.
And the fulfillment capabilities in the background to facilitate it.
Yeah. And
sorry.
No, go ahead, Shlomo.
No, I interrupted you. Go.
Oh, I was just going to say, I think it also depends on like the strategy that we're seeing some of the CPGs take on, that Chris is talking about too. It's like, what options do you have for each party? Like, there's so much negotiation going on. Like, how do you make, number one, the best experience for the consumer? So if they do go to the Cheerios site, they want the ability to get it in 15 minutes, or find out what store locally is, carries the Cheerios, or can I just have it shipped to me from General Mills directly and I'll get it in a week in a box, at the best price. Like, I think it's just figuring out, as the brand or retailer, what makes the most sense for each one of the parties that are involved. And after, what makes the most sense for the customer. So how are you using that to kind of determine what your approach is going to be, where you're going to be, whether that's online, in store? But I don't think it can just be one. Like, I think for the most part, it can't be. That's just not going to be an option going forward.
So
yeah, I was gonna. Sorry, go ahead, Shlomo.
No, Ryan.
Yeah, I was going to look at this from just a slightly different angle, which I think the thoughts you're sharing, Chris and Ann, make a lot of sense, right? Like, think about your business at a higher level of scale and optimize your channel and retails against that. And it just may be right for some that Target is a great partner for whatever reason. It's sort of an in-cap, like singing and dancing type of brand and product. Or, on the contrary, maybe Dollar Shave Club going into Target, I vacated the brand. There's nothing to it that makes any sense, anything different than anything else. It's just sitting next to a couple other brands. But I think pure play e-commerce, if I looked at it through just a pure, hey, let's go to market, all we're going to do is do e-commerce. Clearly, I don't think there's any success there, but I do think there's an important lesson. And it's very similar to like the gold rush in the 1850s. We're going to go way back in time. Who made all the money aside from a lucky few in the gold rush in the 1850s? Merchants. Who sold? Shovels, pickaxes, and pans. These people cleaned up, right? So when I think about e-commerce pure play today, at the end of the day, it's really hard to make money. Just an enormous tidal wave of inflationary costs, ad shipping, et cetera, and return costs. But who made all the money? People that were driving ad networks, people that were providing SaaS software, et cetera, et cetera. So I think for a lot of reasons, there's a lot to learn here that equally applies even to cloud kitchens. I know is on our list, right? Like, it sounds really fantastic, but what happens when the ad costs become insurmountable and such a weight on the P&L? All of a sudden, then it begs the question of, okay, wait a minute, what would our customers expect of us in an ideal sort of world at scale? Should we have restaurants? Should we be in courts or whatever it may be?
Yeah, and the point I'd add to that, which 100% agree with what you said, Ryan, is the other great thing about e-commerce, it's relatively cheaper to test a brand, like to get a concept off the ground. Like, it's so much easier to stand up a website and start selling stuff than it is to build a store. Like, there's a lot of capital that goes into building a store. And so it's a smart way for people to take things to market.
So I think there's what we just spoke about, we can think of the B&H model, right? It's essentially Nikon would buy a corner in B&H, a stock would belong to Nikon, B&H would sell it, make some type of profit on it, and essentially be selling space on the shelf. And ultimately, I think if you're an e-commerce company and you're trying to sell a CPG, unless you're Amazon, I don't know what your differentiating factor is, right? I don't know why I, as a CPG, should give you any type of margin whatsoever. Quite frankly, just you want to keep my product in your warehouse, great, no problem. We'll do some deal, and then I'm sure this is probably happening. So I think just, you know, that's I'll be one comment, which takes us right into the cloud kitchen things. Someone explained to me, actually, because you guys are here, someone explained to me why I need a restaurant that doesn't, like, we have a restaurant, we have a location, but we were not putting any seating areas. All right. And oh, by the way, real estate, it's so hard to find vacant real estate. It really, really is. So we're not going to do the retail real estate because that's like at 120% occupancy. Let's go into some warehouse and let's add, what's going on over here? Is it like exclusions? I don't get it.
Well, I guess, like, if we're talking cloud kitchens, the things that I've seen most recently that make the most sense are like looking at a location like a Kroger and what they're doing, where they're bringing in, you know, a cloud kitchen provider that's Kitchen United, I believe it is, but they're bringing somebody in, or even the shopping centers too, where you're like, you have the food court, you have, like, how do you make these spaces work harder? And then, like in the Kroger example, to be able to get a full, like, you know, 4 different dinners for my family and get my groceries delivered all in one delivery, like, that makes sense to me. That's a value add for the customer. The random cloud kitchens, you know, it doesn't matter to me if it's coming from my local restaurant or the ghost kitchen warehouse. Like, there's no differentiator there for me. I think it's really hard to, like, build that base and build that demand for those individual cloud kitchens. But I think when you start to think about it more as, like, what's the backbone here for this service? What are you going to be able to offer your consumers that's more convenient, that's giving them something extra? Like, in the mall, when I'm, you know, having something delivered to me, when I'm doing a return at the Apple store, getting my computer fixed, like, those things make sense to me. It's an added convenience. It goes back to, I think, this whole conversation about retail innovations that isn't sexy. It's like, what's the operational benefit here? How are you making your business run more smoothly, or how are you able to serve the consumer better? How do you differentiate yourself? And sometimes those things are not like the sexy ghost kitchen that just went up in the warehouse that, you know, you have to wait in line to, or have like a purple car between 4:55 and, you know, 5:55 p.m. and you're picking up your order. Like that. Yeah, that's great PR, but it doesn't make sense. I think it's not going to have legs like some of these other options are.
It would almost feels like there's plenty spaces that have seating in there that you could basically deliver out of. And I guess I do understand as a mall, even more location, you might as well have a better assortment, right? As the mall location. But for you opening a restaurant, why wouldn't you have a place for people to sit down? It almost seems like you're reducing the amount of people that could actually come and buy from you. And I just don't understand why cloud kitchens as a concept is even a concept, right?
But is it?
So Shlomo, I got an answer for you, or at least a point, and it sort of draws back to what Chris was saying earlier. The one benefit that it has is quite simply, I think it's just rapid prototyping, right? Like the fact that I could be inventing and incubating 10 restaurant concepts, hire a chef, branding, etc., and I can just test and see which one potentially is going to be the winner. I think there actually was a gentleman in LA that was doing this, and the one that worked really well was he was jumping on the cauliflower pizza trend. And the branding was impeccable. I think this isn't just a PG audience, so I can just go with this one here. I think he called it Skinny Bitch Pizza. And he was showing me the data on his restaurants. And it was amazing, right? Like, not all things are created equal. It was clearly a winner, right? Now, Google it, and I'm sure it's probably not around. I haven't seen it since. But I think the idea, just like Chris was saying earlier about e-commerce, that you could prototype, you can test, you can do a lot of things really, really quickly and cheaply to just get your feet underneath you and see what works better than the others without having to invest the capital or the time, blood, sweat, and tears of opening up a restaurant.
But Ryan, you're just circumventing a check, right? A check and balance that a consumer has. Consumer goes into a restaurant, goes into a shopping center, sees there's a restaurant here named this one day. Next day it's this, next day it's this. I'm not going into that store to buy anything. I don't know why they close and why they're not. by keeping it behind the scenes, you have the ability to do it. So if you just correlate that to maybe some Amazon issues with regards to overseas shipments and quality of goods and various issues with that, I mean, I'm surprised we haven't had more food poisonings. I mean, poor Chipotle, they got restaurants all over the place. They got food poisoning problems. These guys behind the scenes are like, oh yeah, we just shut down, open up a new LLC. Goodbye, have a good day.
We seem to just become very happy with really cold food.
Well, I think the conversation is interesting to me too. And the other question we always ask is what historical precedents exist already. Like I think Starbucks is an interesting case study in this conversation too, because Starbucks has, you know, a great mobile pickup service, right? Mm-hmm. And they haven't opened that many pickup only stores at this point. They're talking about opening up more, but to your point, there's a higher return on your assets when you can have people do both. So I think you'll still see people lean into that. And then the cloud kitchen concept comes into play when you get a certain density or the food operations themselves get run at a capacity level that just isn't sustainable. And then that type of installation can help defray the ancillary negative impacts that come when that situation arises. But how many restaurants can actually take advantage of that type of demand in a given area? I think that's still the $64,000 question on the cloud kitchen idea too, for the most part. The things like Kroger using it in their stores with unutilized capacity in the store, possibly getting ingredients from the store, offering their customers something, that to me is a whole like separate, you know, part of this conversation too, which a lot of times, even as I'm talking about this, we're victims of our own language and trying to describe everything that's going on. But I think it's good to look at the long story short, I think it's good to look at precedents because I think they can inform how things are going to play out.
I like how everything costs $64,000.
I know, right?
World. It's all $64,000.
Whole game show references.
Also,
Rebekah.
I do want to point out, because you said Starbucks, which was one of my favorite places, and I did work there for quite a bit. I think there is one really important difference, though. The Starbucks pickup stores, they do not deliver. So you are putting someone in an environment where they feel as though they should be able to sit down and like enjoy their coffee. And I think that's actually why they haven't caught on more. And a cloud kitchen is obviously like there's just delivery pouring out of it. So I kind of agree with like Ryan to his point of like, you can just incubate, rapid prototype, etc. So yeah.
But I think that there's also the differentiation of like even cloud kitchen and what Shlomo's talking about too, which is not having a dining area. Like, if I were in the quick service restaurant industry, like I love the idea of no dining room and you're just doing pickup orders. Like you just have set something up. I mean, especially with all the labor issues going on right now and unionization, like, do you really like how many people do you really need in the store to be, it's giving extra responsibilities, and what are you saving potentially from not having to staff somebody that's cleaning the restrooms, that's cleaning the dining areas and all that kind of stuff. Like, I think there's more of that that's going to go into play. And I think consumer behavior is changing too. I mean, yes, Rebekah, I love to grab my Starbucks and, sit there and be able to have that option if I wanted to meet a friend or something. But I think that, this next generation too, like, is that something that they're going to want, or do they want just the convenience, the quick, like I want my coffee and I'm out?
So I have a question. When it comes to integrating social media into advertising of goods, and we see more brands directly trying to control who their target audience is, do you think we're going to see the influencers of Instagram and the Twitters, will that continue, that advertising channel grow in the future? Or is that something we're going to see come back because it's gotten so intense and so expensive to work through these basically branding managers that are hired? I mean, you talk to some of these bigger, 1 million followers, and they're getting paid $20,000, $30,000 a campaign for diapers, right? Like, is that a trend that can survive long term? Or is this just a channel we're using right now?
Yeah, I think it comes down to what the return on investment is. And for a long time, those checks were being written, to anybody, to the person with the biggest following. There's been so much development. Even like I was working on that at Target before I did Store of the Future. I was working with the brand or like the designer teams that they would bring in and trying to find the right people to partner for those kinds of engagements and launches. And it was hard to get, we just were saying like, you post this many times about this thing, and there was no way for us to really see the magnitude or the impact that they were having outside of like some sales lift, which was that because we just launched this design partnership in store, or was that because, Poppy DeLevine posted out 50 million times like that you should go buy this necklace. So I think that what it's going to come down to now, and what people have gotten better, brands have gotten better about, is how do we maintain that we still use the influencers to drive people to our owned properties, to our owned brand sites. We still need them as traffic drivers, or how are we having people like the influencers being on our own sites so that we can understand how much traffic are you driving, what the baskets are looking like from this person, this influencer driving the traffic to us, and then what does that mean, and what does our investment or ongoing investment look like in these people? But I don't think the influencer is going anywhere. I think it's just going to continue to evolve and change, and we'll see larger, more micro influencers, more localized influencers having more of an impact on this. But I don't see it going away, Jessica.
Yeah.
It's an interesting question though. Like I haven't seen the numbers on this, but it'd be interesting to look at like percent of advertising dollars as a percent of sales that go to like influencers versus like traditional like spokespeople prior to this run up and everything, right? Like,
yeah.
I mean, we probably know the answer already in terms of how much money is going to get spent towards this type of thing, because it's really just a refashioning of an old idea at the end of the day.
Exactly.
It's just much more accessible via the tools that we have now to shop. So to that point, it's probably going to be more, I would think, because you're going to see other forms of advertising come down, i.e. television and stuff like that. And it's more attributable too.
Yep.
So the influencers in theory have more power to claim. The best ones have the power to claim that they're making an impact on the business if it's done right.
Plus, they're so fun to watch. Like influencers in the wild, my God, that's one of my favorite follows.
So good.
So good.
Well, that, and you think about like if you're a brand and you're having to go pay your advertising team to go come up with the ad campaign, then go shoot the campaign, then get it out, pay for your TV spot. Like I would have to imagine that you can cover so much more ground through the use of an influencer who's actually doing all of that for you, right? Because they're building it into their brand as well as, putting in your information. So it's one of those things that's like, it could be passe because social media moves so fast, right? First it was everybody was on Facebook, now Meta, then it's like Instagram's the top spot. Now it's TikTok. I mean, it moves so fast through the various methods that it's being put out in the platforms. But I think in totality, it seems like there's such a huge cost savings in terms of advertising for a brand to be using influencers.
So I have a tendency to ask questions that basically are really opinions, but there's
or to just give your opinion.
Right.
Yeah,
Wait a minute.
Shlomo, start the sentence with "I think."
I may be wrong, but so this is great story. This woman's son works for GM. He's a vice president. She walks into the GM front desk. She walks in. She's like, "I'm here to see my son." "Who's your son?" "John Andrews." "John Andrews? Who's John Andrews?" "He's a vice president." "The vice president got thousands of vice presidents. Where?" "He's in. He deals with the seats, with the headrest in the seats. The headrest in the seats." Hold on, let me check again. Passenger or driver's side? So it seems that everything these days is like, we got this new innovation. It's like we got toothpicks, but we're going to call them plackers. And have you seen plackers? Right? This is so great, right? So I spoke about e-commerce, and we spoke about how e-commerce is essentially another way of doing retail, right? It's not the pure play e-commerce, just a way of doing it, right? But yet it spawned this whole thing, right? Retail via metaverse. It's getting late in the day over here. We're almost here an hour. Time flies and you're having fun. But if we don't get to the metaverse, we got to get to the metaverse. And I think the question is the metaverse something different than what we have already? Is just a different delivery form? Is it going to be something different? Are we going to end up with, I forgot the name of the movie where everybody just
Ready Player
sits
One.
in a pod and plugged in?
Yeah, Ready Player One.
Ready. Yeah.
So
Like,
good.
are we just going to have like? Talk to us about the metaverse, where we are. Will you guys see this? This is like so confusing.
You should have been on the plane with us on
Super
Friday. Chris and I were like debating this, much to the dismay of the person sitting
Yeah.
next to us.
Although we went and
You were like,
researched it a lot too.
Yeah.
Like we went down the Google rabbit hole to try to piece it all together in our heads. Too,
So you
'cause
were
it is
like the
super
crying
confusing.
kid to everybody else?
Yes,
Like,
basically.
Pretty much.
People
I
were
would
like,
have loved to have
"Please
been on that
stop
plane.
talking."
Like just the row behind.
Or they found us incredibly interesting and just didn't have the chance to tell us because they were so dazzled by everything that we were
Sure.
sharing on the plane with
Sure.
each other. But I mean, we did research this a lot over the last week because we did this panel at the University of Minnesota the other day where this topic came up a lot. And yeah, I mean, there's a lot to it. Probably not there's too much so probably in the time we have left here. But yeah, the true metaversian idea is really, an immersive environment that everyone can be a part in equally, right? That's what we're fundamentally talking about here. There's a lot that happens before that. And whether that even happens is still, I think, a big, pardon the pun, Rebekah, $64,000 question. But, but there's a lot of stage gates to get there. And so where Ann and I were talking a lot about was, there's still new forms of digital commerce that are taking hold that are a precursor to that. That's what the NFT movement is all about, right? Or how people are interacting with each other inside of a Roblox game via digital avatars. Which at the end of the day are just different forms of digital commerce, I think is what we agreed upon. Yeah. They're not necessarily metaverse. They get lumped as that because it's kind of the initial stage, the first like crawl step to get to that. But that's important to keep in mind because, that metaverse world's a long way out. And so you're really just talking about right now, fundamentally new ways to do digital commerce. And then I think what you have to ask yourself as a retailer is how valuable are those new ways of doing digital commerce? How much volume is there in that? How many resources should I deploy towards this effort? I think you get into those are really great questions to start asking.
I think it's worth brands investing, though, in what their digital commerce strategy is going to be, though, and how they're going to play in those games and where and when it's appropriate for them to get involved. The same way that you 10 years ago started having a social media team that was focused on how your brand was going to show up in social media. Like if you are an electronics brand or you're in the music or hospitality industry, like you probably should be thinking about how you're speaking to that next audience of consumer, whether that's in Fortnite or that's in Roblox. Or like, I think one of the most revealing things from the panel we did this week was like, gaming, there are more people that are gamers than the people sitting in their basements playing Fortnite that we attribute to gaming. Like your mom playing Candy Crush is a gamer. Like that kind of person is interacting in that space. And it might make sense for you as a brand to be looking at those like mediums to be talking to your consumer. So I think, like Chris said, like it's a gradual thing. I don't think we're all going to be buying $1,500 goggles to put on and, shop in our living rooms yet. But there are steps along that process that you should be investing resources in, I would say.
Yeah. And the other thing, last point I'd make too, is we talk about precedents again, like voice came on the scene like around the same time as drones, right? Like maybe 2013, 14, 15. I don't remember the exact date, but like that was going to be the next big thing. If you remember, like everyone was going to be doing voice commerce. That still hasn't even taken off. Mm-hmm. And that's far easier than all the if-then statements that are going to come from a full metaverse reality here. So, I hate to say it because we don't like to do it very often, but I would be very cautious on jumping headfirst in the metaverse at this point.
Shlomo, what's your avatar's name in Horizon Worlds? Are you slow motion again?
No, I haven't, but clearly it will be slow motion. There's no
okay,
question.
obviously. You got to trademark that.
Or Master Obliterator or something like that.
What's that? Or the other question is, do you hang out as a loner in one of the Horizon worlds that really nobody's in anyway?
Ryan, I'm already in your world. So
if you fall in Horizon world, does it make noise? Is that what you're asking, Ryan?
Exactly. Well, I was going to say this. The two revealing stats I was reading about it is that of the Horizon worlds that have been created, only 9% of them have had in excess of 50 people in them, which basically means you have a lot of not happening, which is probably correlated to the fact that 50% of the Oculus Quests that have been sold are no longer actively used after 6 months. I can attest to that for my household. I actually have one sitting to the left of me collecting dust.
Oh, send it to me.
So, yeah, you can try it out. I'll put you in a Horizon world by yourself and you can just kind of look around and have no friends.
Yeah. And Decentraland, they just had figures released on that where the users were like between 38 a day and 8,000, which neither of those numbers, depending on which range you want to believe, is all that great. So, and that in of itself is not the metaverse by its truest definition. It's just another form of digital commerce in which people are interacting and, trying to stake claims in the space. So,
so we need to wrap up. Guys, we need to wrap up, but we need to do one thing. It's the witching hour. Jessica has her one question. We finish off. Do you guys have a couple of more minutes just to do one last questionnaire?
Yeah.
Yeah, a couple of minutes. Yep.
Okay, Jessica, what's the question you ask every time? Go for it.
Right. It's the crystal ball predictions. What does the store of the future look like in 9 to 12 months? What are we going to see here? What's this world going to look like?
Okay, let's go first. We'll finish with the guests. So let them come up with something that sounds smart. We'll sound like idiots in the meantime. All righty. So I actually think the store of the future, I don't know what it's going to look like, but I know we're about to see it because all the real estate business plans are now falling apart, which means all the restrictions that were artificially in place are now going to fall apart. So we're finally going to see innovation within the next 3 years. The shopping mall, the shopping center will look differently than it did before. I'm done.
Cue the Darth Vader music.
Dun, 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 dun. I don't have it. Sorry. Ryan.
Am I up? Okay, so I got to think a little farther out than 9 to 12 months, but and I always try and sort of mark myself as the abstract idea guy, but here we go. One of the largest growing professions in the future will be people that are monitoring delivery bots, whatever that may be, which I thought was hysterical, by the way. I think Shlomo and I were having a meeting with somebody, mentioned one of the CEOs, like how many people are involved in behind the scene delivery robots, right? That are essentially intervening as necessary or monitoring. And I thought that was hysterical because we all believe in this Jetsons idea that like, oh, it's magic. They deliver the food anywhere, but there's actually someone behind it. So my bizarre prediction is that there are going to be delivery robots, but there's actually going to be a blossoming industry of people and kids out of school that just navigate and monitor these things.
Oh.
All righty, Rebecca, Jessica, who's gone?
I'll go. I have the spider on my head. So I think, let's see, what do I want mine to be? Well, someone talked about malls. So let's talk about malls. I think actually we're going to see less single brand occupancy and more of these like smaller direct to consumer multi-brand marketplaces, in particular in the malls. So like think Brick and Click and like what Naked Retail was, and I don't know what they plan to be in the future, if they plan to be in the future, but like those types of things, because I think direct to consumer brands are realizing that they need to actually like team up with other direct to consumer brands to kind of gain that critical mass, and they find a lot of advantage there, and that seems to be happening more in the malls than not. So that's it's a shorter prediction, sorry Ryan, shorter prediction, but I would say 9 to 12 months.
Right. So I'm going to go on the heels of that. Our consumer spending habits are going to change a bit in the next 9 to 24 months, which means people are going to be much more conscious of what they're buying and how much it's going to cost them. I think that we're going to see some of our more luxury brands, mid-luxury brands retract in markets where we're going to see either your top luxury end or your Dollar Generals and your discounters actually be able to expand in the market. And because of that, I think we're going to see kind of a switch back to a lot of e-commerce happening again, because people don't want to get in their car to go buy things because it's the tactile sensation of spending money versus the easiness of something just showing up, and it feels, when your pockets are a little less deep, it feels less harsh to not have to slide that credit card over and over again. So I think we're going to see more the dependence on e-commerce come back that we saw back in 2020 and during COVID lockdowns.
All righty, drum roll. Kristen.
I made a prediction that at the event we did last week, and I think that in 2023 we're going to see another major apparel retailer come out with scan and go shopping, like a Nike or a Lululemon, somebody that already has RFID enabled product. I think we're going to see a scan and go shopping experience, which hallelujah, let's just get them all out there.
Yeah. Gosh, for me, on the 9 to 12 month horizon, I don't think it'll look that different than today. I think if anything, you'll just see more retailers pivot towards curbside pickup. We were down at HEB in Texas. I mean, how many curbside pickup lanes
Oh
they
my
have?
God,
And
like
like 60?
Yeah, it was
No exaggeration. And
Yeah.
the whole building was built for, you could tell, had been built with that in mind too. So I think you'll still see that. But for the longer term, I mean, I've been on record as saying it already. I think Amazon's just walkout technology, particularly what they've got in Amazon Go and Amazon Fresh, is already the greatest retail innovation of the next 30 years. It's just going to continue to take hold and become something more than it is today. And other retailers will start to follow suit to get the advantages of computer vision deployed in their buildings. That's fundamental technology I think is going to dictate everything here going forward.
All righty, great to hear. You at the Buc-ee's of Quickside Pickup, I hear. So that's
Yeah, we
sorry,
didn't get to
Quickside.
Buc-ee's.
We didn't get to
Whatever.
Buc-ee's, yeah.
Not this time. Next time.
But
Bring
you
it
said
back.
it like they had 1,000 lanes. That's Buc-ee's style. I mean, they may even have a patent on that. All righty, thank you so much, Chris and Ann, for taking the time to join us today. Truly an inspiration to us, and just in what you do. No, not in life. Come on, dude.
Thanks.
I look in the mirror. I'm good to go.
God.
Yeah,
But
Right?
not in
with
regards
regards
at all.
to what would
Not in
you
life.
do?
Just
regards to what-
inspiration in some other way, but not in life. Whatever the
Yeah,
hell that means.
I'm talking about retail.
Shlomo, it's all going so well.
Good.
This is
Going great. We almost made it out.
Yeah.
We almost made it out, you guys.
This is what you get. So no, but on a serious note, if that's even possible, thank you so much for joining us, and all you guys online, follow us Retails.io and all your local social media channels. Thank you so much. Have a good day.
Happy
Thank you.
Halloween.
Happy Halloween.
Everybody.
Happy Halloween.